There are two noteworthy events that take place here that were cut. First is that Filch gets mad at Harry for dripping mud all over the castle floors. He was just getting back from Quidditch practice, and he takes Harry to his office. While he's trying to decide Harry's punishment, he's interrupted by a loud crash, which he assumes is Peeves the poltergeist breaking something. After he leaves to check it out, Harry finds a letter on his desk from Quickspell, a course in beginner magic, and we start to learn here that Filch actually can't do magic. He's a squib, which is someone who was born to magical parents but has no magical powers. I do feel like this is something the movie should have kept in, as it tells us more about Filch and why he's so bitter. He's surrounded by children learning magic, while he himself has never been able to use it. There is a very brief deleted scene in the movie where Harry finds the letter at Filch's feet and gives it back to him, but that's all we see of it, and it doesn't lead anywhere. The other thing the movie skipped here is Nearly Headless Nick's Deathday Party. You see, it turns out Nick, who had been talking to Harry when Filch caught him, persuaded Peeves to break a vanishing cabinet over Filch's office in hopes of distracting him from Harry. It worked, so Harry offers to do something for him, and Nick asks him to attend his 500th Death Day party. So Harry, Ron, and Hermione go to it, missing the Halloween feast in the process. There are, of course, a lot of ghosts there, dancing to gloomy music, and the food is old and rotten, and the ghosts can't eat it anyway. They meet the Headless Hunt, a group of ghosts who have all lost their heads, and who have never allowed Nick to join them due to him not having completely lost his head. They also run into Peeves, and this is actually where they meet Moaning Myrtle for the first time, who Peeves mercilessly makes fun of. The trio leave as quickly as they can without being impolite, and on their way to the Halloween feast, this is when Harry hears the voice again. Unlike the Filch thing, I have no problem with them cutting the Death Day party. Sure, it's some interesting world building, and it would have given John Cleese a bit more to do, but it really leads nowhere. So they find the petrified Mrs. Norris. Unlike in the movie, they don't discuss the situation in that corridor in the book. Rather, Lockhart offers the use of his office, and Dumbledore brings the cat there, along with Harry, Ron, Hermione, and the teachers. Filch also has slightly more of a reason to think Harry did it, as he knows Harry saw his Quickspell letter, and therefore knows he's a squib, which he thinks was the reason for it. The conversation plays out more or less the same, except, of course, that in the book, Harry's alibi is that he was at the Death Day party, rather than signing Lockhart's fan mail. Harry, in both versions, does come up with an excuse so as not to tell them about the voice he heard, and of course Snape sees through it. I do think in the movie he maybe let it go just a little too easily. Like, maybe at least have him suggest Harry be punished for lying. Oh, and this is more of a nitpick, but here's another example of Hermione taking one of Ron's lines from the book.
Even in the wizarding world, hearing voices isn't a good sign.
So Hermione asks about the Chamber of Secrets in class, and we're told the story of the Chamber and the four founders. In the movie, the story is told by Professor McGonagall. In the book, however, Hermione asks the History of Magic teacher, Professor Binns, who, as I mentioned in the last video, was cut from the movies altogether. I actually prefer McGonagall being the one to tell it, mainly because she's a much more important character, and it gives Maggie Smith more to do. There's actually a bit here that was cut, where the trio investigate the crime scene where Mrs. Norris was attacked. This is where they notice the spiders for the first time. They also visit Myrtle in her bathroom to ask if she saw anything, but they don't get anything useful out of her. When they leave the bathroom, they're caught by Percy, who tells them off, and reminds Ron to think of Ginny before doing things that could get him in trouble. To which Ron responds that Percy doesn't really care about Ginny, but just doesn't want Ron to mess up his chances of being head boy. So, of course, the trio suspect Malfoy to be the heir of Slytherin, and Hermione brings up Polyjuice Potion as a way of finding out the truth. The book goes into a bit more detail about how the trio get everything they need to make the Polyjuice Potion. First, they need written permission from a teacher to get a book from the restricted section that will show them the ingredients. So, Hermione praises and flatters Lockhart, getting him to sign. Harry later sets off a firework in one of Snape's classes, causing a distraction so Hermione can steal some of the ingredients from Snape's stores. Ultimately, it wasn't necessary for the movie to show us how they got these things, though I have to say, seeing Hermione flatter Lockhart would have been pretty funny. So we move on to the Quidditch match against Slytherin, where of course the Bludger mysteriously seems to target only Harry. The movie extended a bit on Harry and Malfoy chasing the snitch, and Malfoy doesn't end up falling off his broom in the book. I guess they thought it would be more amusing in the movie to have that happen. Also, it's never mentioned in the book that Lucius Malfoy is in the audience. Hermione also doesn't destroy the Bludger in the book. Fred and George simply wrestle it back into the box. What does happen in the book is Lockhart removing Harry's bones. Although in the movie it looks a bit more inflated, for lack of a better word, whereas in the book it's like a balloon with no air in it. Harry has to stay in the hospital overnight, which plays out pretty much the same in both versions. He's visited by Dobby, then Dumbledore and McGonagall bring in the petrified Colin, the Basilisk's second victim. The Dueling Club scene, on the other hand, has quite a few differences from the book. After Snape sends Lockhart flying with Expelliarmus, in the book, Lockhart actually splits up all of the students into pairs, not just Harry and Malfoy. Actually, Hermione is partnered with Millicent Bulstrode, Snape's student, of course, and this is where she gets the hair for the Polyjuice Potion. Once this devolves into full-blown chaos, Snape puts a stop to it, and this is when Lockhart decides to teach them how to block spells, and singles out Harry and Malfoy for the demonstration, which of course leads to Malfoy conjuring the snake, and Harry revealing to the school that he's a Parselmouth by saving Justin. Snape's attitude is also different, as in the book he seems much more visibly pissed off through the whole thing, which I think they probably should have shown in the movie. One change I do like here, though, is that in the movie it's Snape who suggests to Lockhart that he first teach the students to block spells, whereas in the book Lockhart decides on it himself after all the chaos. I like this because it shows that Snape does know what he's talking about when it comes to defense against the dark arts, and takes the job of teaching it to the students seriously. I think I'll also take this moment to address one problem I have with the movies in general, which is that they're very inconsistent, or just don't really make it clear, what each spell actually does. And a lot of them just seem to send people flying. Expelliarmus especially is very inconsistent throughout the movies. It's supposed to be a disarming spell that zaps the opponent's wand out of their hand. Sometimes it does this. Expelliarmus! Expelliarmus! And sometimes it doesn't. It just sends them flying. Now, in this particular case with Snape, it does send Lockhart flying in the book, but it also deprives him of his wand. I'm guessing it sent him flying because there was a lot of anger behind it or something. They made up a name for the spell Malfoy uses to send Harry flying here. And they completely changed which is supposed to be a tickling spell to, wait for it, sending Malfoy flying. In the book, Malfoy also uses a spell that forces Harry to tap dance, but they cut this completely. Also, going back a bit, this is supposed to be a counterspell to undo jinxes, curses, etc. It's not supposed to destroy things. That's reducto. But let's move on. This will certainly come up more later. After Ron and Hermione explain to Harry what being a Parselmouth means, and that he could possibly be Salazar Slytherin's descendant, there's actually a very brief deleted scene, which was not in the book, but I think they should have kept in.
Who am I, Hedwig? What am I?
I think this could have helped make Harry feel more like a three-dimensional character, as we see him doubting himself and who he is. He does this quite a bit in the book, but again, no inner dialogue in the films. This brief moment could have helped that. Another deleted scene that I feel could have been kept happens right after, and it is in the book. In the library, a group of Hufflepuffs, including Ernie MacMillan and Hannah Abbott, both of whom remain constant presences throughout the books, especially Ernie, talk about Harry. Ernie thinks he's the heir of Slytherin because he's a Parselmouth and that Justin is his next victim, but Hannah isn't convinced.
Harry always seems so nice, though. And after all, he is the one who made you-know-who disappear.
That's probably why you-know-who wanted to kill him in the first place. Didn't want another Dark Lord competing with him.
It would have been nice to see this, as it would flesh out the Hufflepuff students a bit more, who, along with Ravenclaw, kinda get the short end of the stick in the movies. There's yet another deleted scene after this, where Harry bumps into Hagrid holding a dead rooster. This was a sort of sub-mystery in the books that they cut from the movie, where Hagrid's roosters were getting mysteriously killed. In the end, it's revealed that it was Ginny Weasley killing them, controlled by Tom Riddle, of course, because the crowing of a rooster is fatal to a basilisk. I'm fine with them cutting this subplot, as it really isn't necessary. Just one more mystery, and I think there's enough already. So Harry comes across the next two basilisk victims, Justin Finch Fletchley and Nearly Headless Nick. Unlike in the movie, it's not Filch who catches him in the book. It's Peeves, who sees the bodies, as well as an opportunity to cause chaos, and screams that there's been another attack, causing students and teachers to flood the corridor. Filch's line,
"Caught in the act,"
is actually shouted by Ernie MacMillan in the book. Once they've moved the bodies, Ernie using a fan to move Nick, McGonagall then takes Harry to Dumbledore's office. The scene in Dumbledore's office plays out pretty much the same. Harry meets Fawkes, the Phoenix, Hagrid bursts in to defend Harry, Dumbledore says he doesn't believe Harry attacked anyone, and Harry doesn't tell him about the voice he heard. One little thing I do like from the book is Fred and George making fun of the idea of Harry being the heir of Slytherin. Make way for the heir of Slytherin, seriously evil wizard coming through. He's nipping off to the Chamber of Secrets for a cup of tea with his fanged servant. They're clearly trying to cheer Harry up, and it works. There is a deleted scene of this, but it comes across a bit more mean-spirited there.
Hey, look, everyone. It's the heir of Slytherin. Be careful. He's a seriously evil wizard.
At Christmas, Hermione tells them the Polyjuice Potion is ready, except for the hair from Crabbe and Goyle, and in the book we see Harry and Ron open their presents. Harry gets a toothpick from the Dursleys, and a note telling him to see if he can stay there over summer too, a tin of treacle fudge from Hagrid, a book called Flying with the Cannons from Ron, about his favorite Quidditch team, the Chudley Cannons, an eagle feather quill from Hermione, and a new sweater and large plum cake from Mrs. Weasley. There's also a funny moment in the Great Hall in the book where Fred and George bewitch Percy's prefect badge so it says Pinhead. So Harry and Ron knock out Crabbe and Goyle and take their hairs, then they make the Polyjuice Potion. Jamie Waylett and Josh Herdman are great here. They truly made me believe that Crabbe and Goyle were actually Harry and Ron. One thing in the movies that I don't quite understand why they did, though, is that everyone who transforms with Polyjuice Potion keeps their original voice.
We still sound like ourselves. You need to sound more like Crabbe. Bloody hell. Excellent.
This isn't the case in the book, and I'm not sure why they changed it. I mean, their windpipes would have transformed as well, right? Harry and Ron find Malfoy, and I love this exchange in the film.
Why are you wearing glasses? Reading.
Reading? Mm-hmm. I didn't know you could read.
What makes it especially funny is that, as I recently found out, that line wasn't scripted. Tom Felton actually improvised it, which is just hilarious. The movie does a good job portraying the dark, gothic atmosphere of the Slytherin common room. As for the scene itself, I think I like the book version just a bit more, because we get a bit more info, like that Mr. Weasley is being fined for ownership of an enchanted car, and Lucius Malfoy is trying to get him fired. Draco also gives a bit more of a definitive statement that he's not the one who opened the chamber, whereas I felt it was a bit too vague in the movie. Ultimately, these are nitpicks, though, as I still think this scene was done really well in the movie, and I love this exchange they added.
Father always said that Dumbledore was the worst thing that ever happened to this place.
You're wrong.
What? You think there's someone here who's worse than Dumbledore? Well, do you?
Harry Potter?
One other detail the movie leaves out here is that Malfoy mentions a secret hiding place in their family's mansion. Ron later informs his father of this, which at the end of the book gets Lucius Malfoy fired as a school governor. Moving on, I will say if there's one part I do think the movie rushed, it's the stuff with the diary. In both versions, Harry and Ron come across it in Myrtle's bathroom. One little moment I like from the book here that wasn't in the movie is that Ron initially tries to stop Harry from picking it up, warning that it could be dangerous. This further demonstrates Ron's street smarts. He may not be an intellectual genius, but he knows what he's talking about when it comes to magical objects and how dangerous they can be. After discovering the diary, the movie cuts right to Harry in his dormitory, who figured out how to work it pretty much instantly. In the book, there's a much longer process to figuring it out. First of all, the trio theorize about why someone wanted to get rid of it, and there is a deleted scene of this, which I think they should have kept.
Tom Marvolo Riddle? I know that name. That night I had detention. My job was to polish the silver in the trophy room. I kept burping up slugs over Tom Riddle's trophy. What was the trophy for? He won an award 50 years ago. Special services to the school or something.
50 years ago, are you sure?
Yeah. Why?
Don't you remember what Malfoy told you? The last time the chamber was open was...
50 years ago. But that means...
Tom Riddle was here, at Hogwarts when it happened. What if he wrote about what he saw? If so, whoever's behind these attacks wouldn't want this diary lying around, would they?
It's a brilliant theory, Hermione, but there's just one flaw. There's nothing written in this diary.
Lockhart, in an attempt to raise school spirits, throws a Valentine's Day celebration, much to the embarrassment of the other teachers. Yeah, in case it's not clear yet, the other teachers really don't like Lockhart. As part of this, he has several dwarves dress up as cupids to deliver valentines to the students across the school. One of these dwarves delivers a love poem to Harry from Ginny, and in an attempt to get away, Harry's bag rips, causing ink to spill all over everything, including Riddle's diary. Malfoy sees the diary and tries to take it and read it, but Harry uses Expelliarmus to get it from him, which gets him in trouble with Percy. Ginny sees this, and this is where she realizes that Harry has the diary, which she will of course steal from his dormitory later. After this happens, Harry notices that despite having had ink spilled all over it, the diary is perfectly clean. This is what tips him off that there's something weird about it, causing him to start experimenting with it. Personally, I think cutting the Valentine's Day stuff from the movie was the right call, but I do think they could have shown some sort of scene where Harry spills ink all over the diary and it's fine. As it is, it seems like he figures out how it works based on nothing. Also, one little thing in the book that I find interesting is this passage. While Harry was sure he had never heard the name T.M. Riddle before, it still seemed to mean something to him, almost as though Riddle was a friend he'd had when he was very small and half forgotten. In hindsight, after Deathly Hallows, we know that this is probably the piece of Voldemort's soul in Harry recognizing the piece in the diary. Rowling really did have so much of this planned from the beginning. The events that happen in the diary itself are also simplified for the movie. In the book, Riddle's replies to Harry are much more detailed and in-depth, explaining everything that happened 50 years ago and how he knew people wouldn't want it to get out. There's even a bit of personality in his writings, as it's described as getting messier and messier, as if he's in a hurry to tell Harry all he knows. In hindsight, this is a perfect showcase of Tom Riddle's manipulative nature, as he's gradually winning Harry to his side by telling him what he wants to hear in a way Harry can relate to. In the movie, we only see the bare essentials of what needs to be said between Harry and Riddle, which kind of strips away that humanity and the connection that Riddle is trying to form with Harry to manipulate him. This really is no one's fault, though. There's only so much text you can show on screen and expect the audience to read. So unfortunately, I don't know how you could pull off this sort of detailed written conversation in a visual medium. As for the events within the diary once Riddle pulls Harry in, the movie condenses this a bit. In the book, we actually arrive in the headmaster's office where we see Dumbledore's predecessor, Armando Dippet. It's with him that we see Riddle have the conversation he has with Dumbledore in the movie, though he does have a very brief interaction with Dumbledore afterwards in the book. I think switching this conversation to Dumbledore makes sense for the purposes of the movie. That said, there are a couple details in the book that get left out. Namely, that Riddle is half-blood, like Harry, and that he grew up in a Muggle orphanage, which he dreads to go back to if Hogwarts is closed, which, considering the attacks and the girl's death, seems quite likely. If anyone can relate to this, it's Harry, who grew up with the Dursleys and also found a home at Hogwarts, just as Riddle did. Riddle knew exactly what he was doing, letting Harry see this part of the memory. By allowing Harry to relate to him, he's gaining his trust and sympathy. Riddle's confrontation with Hagrid is handled well, I think. Riddle does come across as sympathetic towards Hagrid and reluctant to turn him in, but feeling like he has no choice. I think a lot of that is due to Christian Coulson's acting, though. When it comes to the trio's suspicion of Hagrid, the book makes it a little clearer that they don't think he's actually guilty. Rather, due to his love for dangerous creatures, he might have let the monster out 50 years ago to try and take care of it. They don't necessarily think he did it this time. Still, I think the movie gets this across well enough, so I have no real complaints. One thing the movie left out, which we do nonetheless see the results of in Prisoner of Azkaban, is the second-year students signing up for new courses they can take in Year 3 and further. Electives, so to speak. The 5 courses they get to choose from are Divination, Care of Magical Creatures, Arithmancy, Muggle Studies, and Ancient Runes. Harry and Ron sign up for Divination and Care of Magical Creatures, both of which we of course see them start in Prisoner of Azkaban. Hermione, being Hermione, signs on for all 5 new courses, hence why she needs to use a time turner to get to all of her classes in Year 3. After the students find the Gryffindor dormitory trashed and Riddle's diary missing, in the book, on the way to the Quidditch match against Hufflepuff, Harry hears the Basilisk's voice again. This is where Hermione catches on to what's going on and rushes to the library to research basilisks, not telling Harry and Ron what she's doing, of course. And of course, as we know, she ends up being petrified. In the book, however, she's not alone. A Ravenclaw prefect, Penelope Clearwater, who we later learn is Percy's secret girlfriend, is also petrified with her. After Hermione had figured out what the monster was, she warned Penelope to use her mirror to look around corners. So, in light of the new attack, the school starts enforcing new security rules, and Harry and Ron decide to go question Hagrid, who they find nervous and paranoid. Dumbledore then visits, along with Cornelius Fudge. This scene in the book gives us more of an idea of the kind of person Fudge is. We see that he's a generally well-meaning guy who greatly respects Dumbledore, but also a fearful man who cares about his reputation and public image first and foremost, and caves easily to pressure. We don't really get much of a handle on his personality in the movie, but considering we'll get to know him more in future movies, I can understand why they didn't feel the need to really establish his character here. So Fudge takes Harry to Azkaban, and Lucius Malfoy arrives to take Dumbledore away. Now, in the movie, Harry and Ron see spiders heading into the forest right away and decide to follow them. In the book, a bit of time passes first, before they see spiders from the school heading towards the forest. The stuff that happens between the 2 points was all pretty cuttable or connected to things that had already been cut. Like Ernie MacMillan apologizes to Harry for suspecting him, knowing that he'd never attack Hermione, and Lockhart acts annoyingly cheerful, convinced the attacks have stopped, and that he himself must have scared the attacker away. There's also a moment where Malfoy suggests to Snape that he take over as headmaster, foreshadowing Deathly Hallows, whether intentionally or not. Ultimately, I think having Harry and Ron just follow the spiders from Hagrid's hut was a good decision. So Harry and Ron follow the spiders through the forest and meet Aragog, who tells them that Hagrid never opened the Chamber's secrets, that he's not the monster, and that the girl who was killed died in a bathroom. He then sends his children to feed on Harry and Ron, who escape with the help of the car. First, I'll say that they did a good job making Aragog and his family look really creepy, and Julian Glover's voice work is very effective.
That's a lie. Hagrid never opened the Chamber of Secrets. I came to Hagrid from a distant land, in the pocket of a traveler. We do not speak of it. It is an ancient creature we spiders fear above all others.
Now, there are a couple of cuts and changes the movie made to this sequence. First of all, before they get to Aragog, Harry and Ron discover the car sitting in the forest. This does happen in a deleted scene, which I think should have been kept in so it wouldn't feel like the car just comes out of nowhere. Also, the escape from the spiders is extended into a longer action sequence in the movie, which I don't mind. Something I do mind, though, is that they made Ron a bit too wimpy in this part. I mean, Rupert Grint's terrified expressions and sounds are hilarious, but he seems to be constantly complaining throughout the whole thing.
Harry, I don't like this. Harry, I don't like this at all.
Shush.
Can we panic now? Where's Hermione when you need her?
In the book, Ron is terrified, but is just as determined as Harry to get to the bottom of it all for Hermione's sake. So he faces his fears and goes into the forest after a bunch of spiders, reluctant but determined, a true Gryffindor. In the movie, he just seems like a wimp.